Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is my dear friend and brother, Johnney. Johnney, it's such an honor to have you on today. Johnney is a master of flow and he has a really, really interesting journey. So it's a real honor to have you on, Johnney. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you, brother, and aloha, amigos.
so so today we're gonna talk about Johnny's awakening journey. We're gonna talk about his experiences with DMT, his relationship with Yogananda Paramahansa, and some of his experiences living on Hawaii on Kauai. That's a tongue twister, and and basically uh, about Johnny's lifestyle. It's so different and unique. So I'm really excited to hear about your awakening journey, Johnny. Would you be open to sharing that with us?
Yeah, shoots, brother. When I was younger, like most people, I was in survival mode, and I got a degree in psychology because I was trying to figure myself out. I had a lot of trauma from childhood, and I was a heavy substance abuser when it came to the booze and the marijuana. I never really got into the hardcore drugs and whatnot. And after college, I got into the entertainment business through modeling, and I got myself in pretty deep, trying to get famous. And I thought that would kind of liberate me from the world. If I got a whole bunch of money and attention, that I would be free, and I could do whatever I wanted. And that really wasn't the best option for someone with substance abuse issues, because that business can eat you alive if you aren't completely present.
Right.
So about 27 or so, I had the opportunity to get sober from alcohol, and that's where everything changed for me. I was on a fast trajectory to be part of that 27 club, on my way out, and miraculously, I went through a year of getting off of the booze, and after that, I was completely open to change. That's where the new beginnings started for me.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. So the you went into AA, right? Into Alcoholics Anonymous. Was that kind of how the sobriety started?
Yeah, I did that. I did that for an entire year. And at that time, I had some freedom because I had just come out of Hollywood and moved to La Jolla, and my drinking actually got persistently. I don't like the word worse, but more intense. I drank all the time, and I was unhappy, and it led to honestly me not wanting to be alive anymore. And I got all the bells and whistles in my life that everyone says you need. I got I live in the $1 million condo by the ocean. I got the two-seater. I got a pretty girlfriend, and I'm trying to kill myself at that time. And drinking all day, and I mean something there doesn't really add up.
Right.
And it got to a point where I couldn't take anymore. It was either life or death, my rock bottom. And after an attempted suicide, uh, I realized that I couldn't quit drinking if I wanted to, and that was the change for me. Coming to that realization that I needed help, and that's why I chose to take a year out of my life and go through a pretty intensive Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous journey,
Mhm.
which I did on my. I navigated it through my own. I didn't go to a rehabilitation program or anything like that, which I was able to work out my own way. So yeah.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So you became sober, right? And
Mhm.
what started unfolding from you from there?
Everything, because as my mind started to clear out over a year or so, my personality and my attraction shifted. From a nightlife and things of that sort to a whole new horizon. And I'm really grateful because I had a DMT experience that really opened everything up. It showed me that I wasn't exactly who I thought I was, that I wasn't the character in the story. I was everything embodied in a collection of experiences. And on
Right.
the other side of that DMT experience, all of the desires that I had before that were survival based were no longer part of my character. I was wide open for a whole new journey after that.
Mhm. So what can you share a little bit about that journey? What did you see? Where did you go? Because DMT journeys can be so different, right, for different people. What were some of the
Oh,
highlights for you?
bro, it's such a trip because at that time I had gotten back, even after I got sober, I had gotten back into modeling and I was having these strange experiences with the shadow aspect of Hollywood that I was trying to get away from. And I was up in Colorado at my friend's wedding in 2015. And I met this shaman at his bachelor party next to a fire. And I told him all of the things that were going on.
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Are you ready for your life to change?" And I was like, yes, I am very ready for my life to change.
Yeah.
And the next day, he gave me a hit of DMT in a little baggie, and he didn't tell me what it was, but my friend did. And I went out, and after the wedding and all the festivities were over, and I just blasted off. And I came outside of my body, and I'm like hovering above the ground, and this record of light just showed up, and it was like an organic map of everything I had ever experienced. And then I
Like
went
an
past
Akashic
it.
record almost, huh?
Yeah, it was my Akash
Hmm.
and my record of light. And I went past where I was at in the story, and it showed me that my story was already existing and that I
Mm.
didn't have to. And I guess in a way, it reprogrammed my mind to not worry so much anymore.
Hmm.
I didn't have to constantly be worried about trying to get as much money as I can get or try to get as much sex or as or any of those things before I die. I was like no longer stuck in that fear of death.
Hmm.
And these things just happen naturally. Because when I came back from that experience, all of a sudden all of the things I couldn't do myself were no longer present.
Hmm.
It's like love did for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Hmm.
And then I went back to California and all of the things that were in my life didn't resonate anymore. And I found myself sitting down at Yogananda's ashram
Hmm.
at Swami's, trying to figure out who I was. And that's when Yogananda kind of showed up and was like, "Hey, are you ready to begin living now?
So
That you're
was that
free."
a vision or were you meditating? How did he show up for you?
He showed up in a lucid dream,
Okay.
and he invited me into a whole new way of living. And he said that he was my teacher.
Hmm.
And that's how it began with Yogananda. And at that time, I had had lucid dreams when I was a kid, but
Hmm.
I didn't understand exactly what lucid dreams were. So it was like at that time, it kind of was like, what is going on?
Right.
This Indian guy showing up in my dreams that I'm awake in.
Right.
Like, well, and then all of a sudden I go down to the Cardiff Library and I see his picture on the cover of a book, and I'm like,
Mm.
that's who just showed up in my dream. And then the book
Whoa.
shows up the next day. And I'm like, wait, that's how interconnected this all is. And that's when I
Mm.
started to see that these experiences were all tied together and there was like no coincidences. Like I was like, wow, it's so intricately woven that, I'm not just in this like random world, that everything is love working through everything.
Yeah, there's a
That was the
term for that,
beginning.
synchronicities, right? Like where everything just starts to line up and open up in all these ways, right?
Exactly. And it's where it all began. That's where I was reborn, you might say.
Hmm.
Person I am now was not around before that first 27 years. Maybe it's longer with the lag, maybe 29 years or so. I can't remember the actual ages anymore.
Right.
Um, so
How old are you
yeah,
now?
I'm 38 years old in this lifetime.
Okay. Okay. So,
Mhm.
so 2027, you said everything really started for you, right?
Yes.
Okay. Beautiful. So when when you started connecting with Yogananda, for those that don't know, can you share a little bit about what he's about? He's already passed from this body,
Mhm.
so his teachings continue on. Can you share a little bit about the organizations he started, what his mystery school is about, all these kind of things.
Oh, I'm really happy that you brought this up because Yogananda is my teacher, and he kind of bridged worlds, you might say. He bridged the East and the West, kind of like Bob Marley bridged, the Caucasian and African race.
Hmm.
He kind of showed everyone a whole new view
Hmm.
of who the human being is. India was very rich with their spiritual practices throughout the last couple centuries, but they were lacking in the intellectual side and the material aspects that progress that the Western world was making, and
Right.
even in science and things of that sorts. So Mahabhavatar Babaji brought it to Yogananda's attention that he would have to go to the West and bridge the two worlds. That some highly evolved yogis were going to be born into the Western world, and they would await him, and he would be their teacher. He would awaken them through the practice of Kriya Yoga, and
Hmm.
he carried on Lahiri Mayasa's uh, Kriya Yoga practice,
Okay.
and that's the bread and butter of Yogananda's uh, offerings, you might say, is Kriya Yoga, which is a series of pranayama techniques that help liberate the life force from the physical body and then the astral form.
Right. So with the Kriya Yoga that Yogananda brought to the States, you're basically using the breath to raise the Kundalini energy up your spine, and there's many techniques to prepare the body, right? And then as the energy rises up, the chakras open up and everything, the third eye starts to open up, and the pineal gland, right?
Yes, and this is where the teachings of Jesus Christ come in, because forgiveness is the golden ticket, and our heart is the door. So the life force comes back up into that heart ray, and a lot of us carry trauma through our experiences through past lives and this life. And as we start to forgive ourselves and unvictimize our consciousness, the life force can rise up through the heart ray and into the higher dimensional rays present in the physical form.
Hmm.
Yogananda is a guide to help us integrate this process. And the breath is the grace. So as we allow the grace to come into our heart, we go through this forgiveness process, and then the Shakti can naturally rise. And we can
Hmm.
have a clear channel all the way to the third eye. And that's where we receive the golden ray of Christ,
Hmm.
from my experience through practicing Kriya Yoga.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for those that don't know, Yogananda Paramahansa was very connected to Jesus Christ. If you go into one of Yogananda's ashrams, which is called the Self-Realization Fellowship, you can see Jesus is up there on the altar with the other deities and things like that, and the gurus. And so Yogananda even wrote a book called The Second Coming of the Christ, which was his last book that he ever wrote. Can you talk a little bit about that and the impact of that on your life?
Oh, that was huge. In my life, I was raised with some very dogmatic teachings. So my understanding of Jesus Christ wasn't necessarily something that my soul embraced. It was something I ran from. And, I ran so far away from it that I was intrigued by Vedic philosophy because it was so different. My
Mhm.
soul said yes to that, where my soul said no to the way I was introduced to Jesus Christ as a
Mhm.
child. There was a lot of judgment and things of that sort that I didn't really relate to.
Mhm.
And when I arrived at the teachings of the second coming of Christ, it opened my mind to who Jesus Christ truly was. And he was an embodiment of forgiveness. So, how could I take who Jesus Christ was and integrate it into my consciousness? I love Jesus's story when he was embodied thousands of years ago, but I really wanted to understand what he was trying to bring to consciousness,
Mhm.
why he was such a powerful door for us all. And
Right.
now I see that it was actually the forgiveness aspect.
Mhm.
And Yogananda introduced me to understanding the living Christ,
Mhm.
and then that carried over to to a whole new series of teachings, the way of mastery. And most recently for me, A Course in Miracles, which has been, oh, the my bread and butter for the past year. And these all are, they're all the same teachings. That's the beautiful part, is Yogananda also introduced me to the idea of oneness, and now everything is consciousness and there is no separation.
Hmm.
So my experiences with Yogananda are also my experiences with everyone and everything.
Hmm.
They're my own experiences with myself and with you today, and there's no separation,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and I'm so grateful that, now I don't even know anymore. And that's the best part. I
Right,
don't I don't
right.
know. I don't know shit. I'm just present.
Yeah, the more I learn, the more it seems like I don't know anything, you know?
There's nothing to know. The only thing that's real is now.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So just to dial it in a little bit, Yogananda comes into your life, right? He comes
Mhm.
as this lucid dream, and now you find his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And
Mhm.
where on the timeline after this did you decide to renounce all material possessions and basically give up all that?
Well, I had some unique experiences in Hollywood, and I had an opportunity to help my mother, who was a severe drug addict,
Hmm.
and that was intricately woven into the healing of my heart and my journey. And after I had an opportunity to help her get into a long-term recovery center in San Diego,
Hmm.
I was led into Mexico, into the Baja, by the
Okay.
president, through a collection of unique signs, you might say.
Hmm.
And my truck was ran off the highway by an 18-wheeler in the middle of the night in a town called Jesus Maria Valley.
Oh, wow.
And and that was one of the most powerful times in my life, because that was when I surrendered my life.
Hmm.
And after that, I had no choice. That was the point of no return, you might say.
Hmm.
And I had some unique experiences with the Archangel Michael down there, and with the realization that after I surrendered my life to Christ, that I now worked for the source. I worked for love. And
Hmm.
and when you work for love, you're no longer necessarily in charge.
Right,
And
right.
now, yeah, and since then, I'm just led by the present into experiences, and they unfold. And I never know exactly what I'm up to, but it's beautiful. And it's been a process over a decade or so. That was back in 2016. And that's another thing that Yogananda did, is he led me back to Jesus.
Hmm.
And now Jesus, he shows up in my life all the time. But I know him as everything and everyone.
Hmm.
I see Jesus in everything. And he
Right.
reminds me, anytime anything comes into my life that's an offering that the Spirit adds upon me, it's like Jesus shows me, hey, I gave this to you, bro. Yeah,
Hmm.
don't forget that you
Hmm.
work for me.
Right.
Don't let your ego get ahead of yourself, that you're doing anything. No, I'm giving you this so you can continue to be in surrender, and you can spread the light.
Right.
The inner Christ light
Right.
that we all are, because we're all a mirror of that.
Okay. Yeah. Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. And for those that, you know, that are listening, that have been grew up going to church and things like that, this is something different. This is a relationship with Christ that is with Christ consciousness, right, Johnny?
Yes, everything is consciousness. Now, they use that word very loosely around all of these spiritual teachings now.
Hmm.
And I think people may get a little intimidated by that word, Christ consciousness,
Hmm.
because the true Christ consciousness is everything.
Hmm.
The source, the Father, Mother, God, as I don't see it as a certain polarity, gave birth to consciousness, which is Christ. And anyone who goes through the ascension process back into what some call Christ consciousness, and are able to bring the life force back to the third eye and receive that golden ray, they become one with this consciousness. They
Hmm.
become one with all of consciousness, which is Christ. They
Right.
become Christed beings, and they become a pure reflection of Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
And that's what Jesus was trying to say when he came in embodiment. He said, I'm all of you and you're all of me.
Right.
There is no separation in consciousness. You can't separate, you know, light from light. It's one field
Right.
of light,
Right.
you know? So, like it's all Jesus. It's all
Hmm.
Christ. It's all Peter. It's all Johnny. It's all any label that we give light. It's a unified field,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's for some people that's a difficult thing to grasp because experiences like DMT and plant medicine really gives us the full experience of what you're talking about, right?
And I've
So,
seen it so many times on ayahuasca and DMT and LSD and even heavy doses of mushrooms that it's all just vibrating light or what Yogananda calls cosmic intelligent energy. I've seen my hands flash on and off. I've seen mountains in the backscape flash on and off, as superimposed fields of light.
mhm,
And they're like Adobe Photoshop. If you played with that before, you can set the layers on top of each other. Even
right.
our physical form is a layer of light that's superimposed on like this room I'm in,
Hmm.
and that's not who I am. I'm the entire experience that's perceiving the experience through the five senses. And
Right.
that's what is perception.
Hmm.
But I know now the truth is that I'm everything. I'm the entire present moment, and so are you. So, I can identify with the body as what I'm witnessing this experience through at the moment, but I know the truth in my heart that there is no separation.
Hmm.
And that's what they call atonement with Christ.
Hmm. Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. I really resonate with that. And but let's bring it back a little bit to your story, right? So we're at the chapter in your story where you're you're connecting with Yogananda, you renounce all your things, right? When did you start working with more plant medicines and diving into that world more?
Okay, I had some pretty profound experiences with DMT. They showed me that, to begin with, that I wasn't the character in the story. The second time, I had an experience in Pagosa Springs with my good friend from Colorado, and I was shown that he was me. I was
Mm,
sitting in my astral form, and he was sitting in his, and he was me. And after that, when I came back into my body, I no longer could be anything but kind to other people because I knew that everyone I saw was a mirror of myself in a disguise.
hmm.
No matter who they were me. So if I was projecting any of my feelings onto others, they needed to be kind. Even if people triggered me, if I said something not so nice to them, I was only doing it to myself.
Hmm.
That was my second experience. And then I had a series of other experiences with DMT that took me deeper into these realizations of oneness.
Hmm.
And then ayahuasca came into the scene. And ayahuasca was like the Norton antivirus for my trauma. It was like taking my light body and releasing density that I couldn't get to through my mind. It
Hmm.
had to be purged out in another way. And the DMT opened my third eye, and then the medicine made my stomach sick. So I was able to release that density, and I was free of it. Um,
Mm,
and, and the wild thing about that was for years, I was in places like Sedona and Encinitas and in the Baja and Todos Santos and Cabo and La Paz and places where people were all having these ayahuasca experiences.
hmm.
But I was looking for it. So I couldn't find it.
Mm, I
And
see.
it taught me a valuable lesson that anytime I was looking for anything, I seemingly couldn't find it. And as soon as I let go, it would show right up. And I
That's
ironically went
huge.
back.
That's a huge thing you just said right there. Yeah.
It's real. It's the nature of the universe.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like a universal law.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. We should, if others are open to it, we can let everything come to us. That's really what we're designed to be. We're just kind of floating through the present and everything's being added upon us. We just ride that wave, and that's the flow that I know. And if I get outside of that and I allow my mind to start trying to control outcomes and reaching for things, then they fall apart in my hand.
Hmm.
I might have a little grasp on them, but they never work out. But
Kind
to
of
get
like
back to
sand
my
in your hand, right? It's like you can only hold so much that starts to fall through the fingers.
exactly, exactly. And I went back to Houston because my grandmother developed Alzheimer's, and she was my mom. My mom had me at a very young age, so my grandmother raised me, and I had the opportunity to be there for her for a couple years, from the time she went from the beginning of Alzheimer's to the end of Alzheimer's, which was very challenging, but the best time of my life. And in Houston, Texas, of all places, a girl approaches me that was part of a Latin American uh, circle of healing.
Of course.
And, and she walks up to me and she's like, in the last place I expect, and goes, "Hey, do you want to come to an ayahuasca journey with me?" And that's
Mm,
where I got introduced to this group. And I was with them for 3 years, and they would pool all their money together, and they would bring up their favorite healers from villages in Colombia and Venezuela and Mexico, and we'd work with Niños Santos, or little saints is what they call mushrooms in Mexico,
yeah.
and we'd work with I from like the villagers' perspective in Venezuela, and then from a Colombian perspective, and it was this unique opportunity to go through this process, and it opened my eyes to a whole nother dimension that certain people play in. I witnessed my first shape shifting medicine man, who worked through the jaguar and things of that sort that I never even understood that could actually exist in the physical.
Yeah, let's talk
Um,
about that a little bit. What was that like?
oh, bro, I mean, this medicine man came up from a little town in Venezuela because one of the facilitators who lived in Houston of this healing center was from that village,
Hmm.
and he was born into an ayahuasca family, and
Hmm.
he was going to be an apprentice from the beginning. And
Right.
his teacher was back in that village, and we all had this vision of the jaguar within our experience, within our ayahuasca journey that night.
Oh,
And
wow.
we all talked about it the next morning, and everybody saw this jaguar, and he didn't speak English, so he had a translator, and he was like, "Oh no, that was my teacher. He came into your experience
Oh,
from
wow.
from the village, and he was
Hmm.
guiding me because I'm his apprentice, and he's actually the one that was leading this ceremony."
Hmm.
So in that journey, he told me that I would have 3 experiences with ayahuasca, only 3.
Hmm.
And I have another experience with ayahuasca a couple months later with the Colombian medicine man, which was very unique. And I'd say maybe a few months later, I'm driving somewhere, and all of a sudden I start seeing this jaguar. And I'm not just seeing it through like my physical eyes and whatnot, it just keeps showing up in my mind. And I'm driving, and it was overwhelming. Jaguar, jaguar, all through me.
Wow.
So I drive over to see Carlos, and I have to wake him up because he's up all night and whatnot. He gets up and he's like, and I start telling him about it, and I'm like, "Hey, Carlos, man, I can't get this jaguar out of my mind." He just starts laughing. He just releases this belly laugh, and he's just like, and then he walks back. He just kind of leaves me there and walks back inside, and then out walks the medicine man from Venezuela, and I didn't even know he was in town. And he
Wow.
walks over. He walks over to me with Carlos, and he says, "Be here this weekend. There's a 2-day ceremony. You've been called. You've been
Wow.
called by the jaguar."
Oh,
And
wow.
I mean, it was things that I couldn't even begin to explain to most rational minded people. Like, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that you hear about that is absolutely, I mean, unreal, but real, real, but unreal. Doesn't rationally make sense, but happens.
Well,
You
I
know what
mean,
I'm
what
saying?
is real, right? Like, I mean,
Exactly.
so it I mean, it brings up the question uh, for the people that haven't done ayahuasca or DMT or these deeper psychedelic journeys. What do you recommend for people to face their fears and to prepare themselves? I know spirit has a way of preparing people and it comes in the right time, but is there any recommendations with working with DMT many times and with these surrender, right? Surrender medicines where you have to fully let go. Is there any recommendations you'd say from all the experience you've had with it for people that are just wanting to try it?
You let it come to you. Like we were talking about before, when we're seeking something, it's not the right time.
Hmm.
in my life, everything that I needed, the profound medicine experiences, because I've had lots of them where I was seeking it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go get some mushrooms, or I'm going to go. And I didn't have those deep experiences. But when they showed up and someone just handed me a big old mushroom or like something, and it would take me deep in. And then all of a
Mm,
sudden I'd have these realizations that I was supposed to have at that time. So I
okay.
would suggest to those who are open to wait for it. And then
Okay.
we can either say yes or no. You know, we do have free will. So when that opportunity comes a knocking, we can say yes. And if we say yes, then for me in my life, every time it opens up even more.
Hmm.
And I don't allow fear to come in. I just go with it.
Hmm.
And then when we no longer need the medicine anymore, it doesn't show up.
Right.
And I'm now like, I lived in Kauai for 4 years, surrounded by people doing ayahuasca, but no one came up to me and asked me if I wanted to partake because it's all one. And I no longer needed those experiences, so they weren't presented to me in my present
Absolutely.
moment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had the same experience with ayahuasca where the spirit of ayahuasca came in and said, you can continue on this journey if you want to go down that route, or you can work with other medicines, and this is enough for you because I've shown you everything you need to see. And so I had a choice, and I said, I'm gonna I'm gonna work with other medicines, and this is enough for me, because I
You
really
do.
did, I had 2 nights in a row, and it showed me everything I needed to know and see. So I felt completely content with that.
And I'm grateful that you had that experience because I remember we used to talk about it all the time,
Yeah,
about these journeys,
yeah,
and I'm the same in my life. Like I'm not really called to those experiences anymore. Psychedelics, they can open the mind, but it's the forgiveness that heals our heart, and there's no substitute to it. No matter how if someone took 100 ayahuasca journeys, it's not going to unvictimize the consciousness. That's where
exactly.
my relationship with Jesus is inviting Christ into our heart. He wasn't here to save us. He was here to show us the way.
Like
We
being an
have to save
example
our
of what's possible, right?
exactly. It's up to us to have the courage to forgive ourselves for everything that we never did because the past doesn't exist anymore. And if we carry things with us, they're not necessary because we're reborn in every moment. The
Well,
guilt and the shame,
yeah, I agree
it's,
with
it's
that, but
self-inflicting.
yeah, I agree with that for sure. I just think there is a huge piece of taking the accountability for all the choices we made and all the decisions that we made and all the soul contracts that we came in with and acknowledging that I chose all that, you know?
I hear you. There's
There,
karma. For
huge,
everything we do,
yeah.
there's an equal reaction. And I'm just so grateful. A Course of Miracles was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me when it comes to healing the heart, and that helped me with my mom wound because I had a deep abandonment wound and damage to my feminine polarity and whatnot from the trauma that my mom handed me. I
Mhm.
was carrying that for her. Now that I understand, and A Course in Miracles really walked me through healing those deep-seated emotional wounds in my subconscious mind, and what some might say the heart ray, because I could get into it, but you know what I'm saying? Forgiveness is the door. It opens everything. Having an open mind from the psychedelic experience is amazing because we're no longer like judging everything.
Right.
We're like,
And
oh, it's
that's
all,
huge
but
too.
exactly. Non-judgment of the self comes first, and then when we don't judge ourselves, we don't judge what we're witnessing in the dream because we know it's all consciousness.
Mhm.
It's just a collection of experiences, and we just accept it as it is, and it makes life a lot easier. You know, I
Right.
notice things now, and if I don't want to be around it, I'm not around it. But I'm not going to say whether or not it's right or wrong or evil or because it's not up to me.
Right.
It's happening.
Hmm.
I'm not going to judge it because I know it's a unified field of light. I'm
Right.
just witnessing.
Hmm.
And if I don't want to be in the same experience with it, I leave. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
And
Yeah.
that's huge because that's discernment, right? It's the awareness to perceive those energies and those experiences as something that's not serving us anymore. And for a lot of people, that takes time to develop that awareness, you know?
Exactly. And I could talk a lot about the things I've discovered through all of Yogananda's teachings. The Bhagavad Gita, he translated the second coming of Christ. There's all these other amazing authors like Michael Singer, who is also a devotee of Paramahansa Yogananda, and Damago Ruiz and Eckhart Tolle and Rasha and so many amazing authors. But I can just share with you guys that like A Course in Miracles was a golden door. And if others see the value that I see in it, they can choose to go through that door, or the second coming, or the Gita. And I would just water it down, because these are pure channels. And these doors were profound for me. Absolutely profound. And yeah, I just want to leave it at that, and the last door for me was A Course in Miracles, and it is absolutely amazing. And actually, if you're open to it, I'd like to share a tangible miracle that happened through A Course in Miracles.
I'd love it. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so my wound with my mom was very, very deep. And about 4 years ago, when I was actually staying at your condo in Encinitas,
Hmm.
I was skating a mini ramp, because I used to skate and drop ramps and stuff. And a mutual friend of ours, Daniel's backyard, and I blew my knee out. It went sideways on me.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize that that was an emotional wound in my subconscious mind. And it was in my feminine channel in my left leg and my knee. And over the next 4 years in Kauai, I kept blowing that knee over and over and over again, because I kept stepping into this I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough experience with the opposite polarity, because that's what my mom programmed into my mind as a child, that I wasn't enough.
Hmm.
And then I kept inviting partners into my life who were just shadows of my own consciousness. And they presented me with the same poke. You're not enough. You're not enough. And every time that happened, my leg would go sideways on me again.
Oh,
It,
wow.
it would literally be concurrent with these. I would enter relationships, and then the girl would come into my life and say, I love you, but you're not enough. And my leg would go sideways. And it happened one last time about a year ago, and it put me into the ER. I met this girl, and she thought that I was a lot wealthier than I actually am.
Hmm.
And when she found out that I wasn't, she told me that you're not enough. And she told me about the other men that she was interested in. And my leg went sideways on me. I was carrying a paddleboard down for us to go paddleboarding, and it put me in the ER.
Wow.
And they did what is the MRI and whatnot. And they put me in a full leg cast, and I retore the meniscus and the inner ligament.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, I was reading in the Course of Miracles about expect miracles to happen now, pretty much. The chapter that I was reading was actually concurrent with my experience. It's like I was living it.
Right.
And I go from a week and a half later, I go in to see my primary care doctor, because she's in Kapahi and she's got to approve for the insurance the next step to see the surgeon, which I already said I was going to do, because 4 years of blowing your knee out when you're a skater and a surfer is just agonizing.
Hmm.
I couldn't be my normal groovy dancing, surfing, skating self. I'm like hobbling on
Right.
this continuous injury that was emotional. I got this emotional wound that's manifesting in the physical, and now I can't be groovy anymore. Um, and this is a week and a half later, after two torn ligaments, a meniscus tear, and I think it's an MCL on the inside, right? I torn the ACL, MCL, and meniscus over and over. And she takes my full leg brace off, and she puts me in a sling, like one of the pull over kind of ace-like bandages, and says, stand up and walk around. I stood up and walked around. She said, your leg is healed. You don't
Wow.
need to see that surgeon in a week from now. You don't need
Wow.
knee surgery. And she's in Kauai. She's a pretty progressive doctor, and she was keen with like some of Joe Dispenza's work, and the science of the mind and things of that sort. And she was
Hmm.
like, whatever it is, it worked. And I was
Hmm.
like, I didn't say too much, because I didn't want to, she still was a doctor, and I didn't want to. I was just grateful. And now I could stand up and go all the way to the ground. Look, I'm walking right now. My knee is completely healed, And that was a miracle that happened. I mean, the tendon doesn't repair itself. You have to have surgery. And I haven't had knee surgery. And my knee is completely healed in a short amount of time from the Course in Miracles. And it helped me go into my subconscious mind and forgive myself and realize that I was always enough. And now I no longer have the emotional wound.
Mm.
And I could tell you guys about so many miracles that have happened since then, including the miracle realization that we're all mirrors of the body of Christ. Christ lives within me. I've always been perfect as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever need to be anything more than I am to be
Exactly.
received by the kingdom of God.
Right.
It's only my own judgment of myself that keeps me outside of the joy that I am.
Right. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I love that story, man, because I remember how you had injured your knee and you were staying at my place, and there's all kinds of different things like that that happen to the body to teach us where the emotions are stuck, and then we can take a look inside ourselves in order to heal that and stop the program for good. These patterns, they repeat. I shared on the previous podcast that came out last week, right, where the I worked in physical therapy, and every 3 years, which seems like some sort of uh, pattern, right? Every 3 years, if somebody would come in with a knee injury, if they hadn't worked through emotional aspects of it, then they would come in on the dot in 3 years with the same injury, a different surgery, or another knee replacement in the same knee, same thing over and over again. And it was across the board. I mean, with whoever didn't do the work, with the emotion and the forgiveness and what you were sharing. And it's fascinating because most people don't think like that. They don't correlate the body with emotions, but the emotions are held in our myofascia, in our body, in these different areas and different parts of our areas. Just like when you look at one of those acupuncture charts of a hand or a foot, you can see that different parts of the hand are correlated to different organs. It's the same thing with the whole body. It holds different emotions in different places. So it's fascinating, man. I'm really inspired by what you just shared. It's amazing.
And the Course in Miracles, it totally opened a whole nother dimension of that to me.
Mm-hmm.
It took me through the final aspects of not judging the field or my experience or my present moment. I see now that all of the characters that show up in our experiences are also us, and they're our shadow. And when we get triggered, it's actually God in disguise poking us
Right.
to release trauma within our energy body.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to re-experience it again over and over again until we release that energy and we stop judging ourselves. And then we no longer judge the shadow, and the shadow no longer appears. It's
Right.
like us cleansing ourselves, because the mind creates the body and the body creates our dream. It's the dream of the world is just our own consciousness, and we all have our own dream, and all of these dreams make up the collective dream, and we're all intricately woven together and by the divine will, and there's nothing outside of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to go, oh, that person was a jerk, they did this and this and this to me,
Right.
now I know that that's not the truth. That was me showing up for me to poke me and show me where my wound is at.
Right.
And they were actually doing me a huge favor. Now, I might not want to be around them anymore for this or that reason, but I'm very grateful because I didn't know that was still active within me.
Right.
And
And
I can no longer.
I would add to that where there is the opposite, where somebody can show up and show us what we have healed,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it works both ways.
Absolutely. And there are no coincidences. And that's another thing, is I can't be upset with God anymore. Or let me say love. I like to use the word love, because it's perfect. Everything, even the downturns in my life, where things were difficult, like when I was living in a hammock in the jungle and it's raining and stuff, it was absolutely perfect because I was being introduced to gratitude, because on the other side of it, there was an upturn, and I couldn't be grateful for this until I experienced the latter. I couldn't
Right.
know love until I had known darkness.
Hmm.
So I had to go through darkness and suffering before I could be grateful for not suffering.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I like this more, you
Right.
know? And and I mean, we could look at that in every way, like I became familiar with the light through the dark,
Hmm.
and it wasn't by chance. I was born into what some might call a denser dimension. So I could take all of that within my petri dish for my DNA, and I could sort it out for all of the previous generations that were behind me. And then I could literally go through my own inferno to turn that light on within, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Uh, I had to be born into the dark to become a phoenix, you might say, in my own dream, and that was through forgiving myself and getting rid of judgment.
Hmm.
And now my life is not like that anymore.
Hmm.
Only pretty amazing experiences show up wherever I go, because wherever we are, wherever we go, there we are.
Yeah.
And when we've
Well,
healed.
it makes me think, and I'd love to ask you and hear your experiences with numbers and angelic guides and how the numbers appear and show up for you and how it all started for you.
Oh, wow. 333 started showing up immediately after I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. And I know that, I'm a quantum guy. I really am. I'm all about the chaos field and understanding, particle wave theory, and that's how I integrate. But I had some unique experiences in Jesus Maria Valley, like I shared. And then I have this continuous relationship where Jesus shows up and's like, hey, yo, bro, don't forget, I'm giving this to you. You know, you're on the Jesus wave.
Hmm.
And I have an expanded point of view with the living Christ, and the Holy Spirit. But yeah, and anytime I know I'm in alignment, which Jesus was a representation of, that 333, I see 333 everywhere, and I know that I'm in alignment.
Hmm.
And no matter what's going on in my experience, if I'm seeing the 333 on license plates and showing up on people's shirts, as weird as all kinds of things, I'm like, oh, I'm in alignment, mind, body, and spirit right now. And
Hmm.
I don't have to try to change anything about my dream character and my trajectory right now, because everything I'm experiencing is perfect. And then the other numbers come in, and it's all just the universe speaking to us, because it's all in numbers.
Yeah.
There's no coincidences, and then a lot of times it's in threes. Most recently it's 888. I mean, I didn't pick a car out that picked me because the license plate said 888, and it showed up over and over and over. And I'm looking at it on Facebook Marketplace. I'm looking on it on Craigslist. And it just, every time I do a search, I'd search for a van and the same car shows up. And then the guy sends me a video and it's got 888 on the license plate. And then I asked the guy like where he's going to pick me up, and he's going to pick me up right where I'm getting off. And
Hmm.
then he's got the same name as me, and he's got the same collection of experiences, and it all just goes woo.
Right. Right.
And it's so interconnected. It's absolutely wonderful. This dream that we live in.
Right. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
mind it's so easy sometimes for that monkey mind to be like, no, that can't be it. Right. And then spirit comes in and is like, okay, here's another sign. Here's another sign. Here's like, it's right there. Like, look at it, please. Right.
Yeah. And we're all exactly where we're supposed to be. All we have to do is surrender to the now, the present.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's a very simple idea. Just be here now. But after we are able to go through our process, it has to go like this before it can come back to here. We
Mm.
have to go through our own journey, and we use the tree of knowledge to discover all of these things. And then we get to the now, and we don't need the tree of knowledge anymore, because it's all paradox. I could sit and tell you guys about everything I learned in every book and all of this, but it doesn't even matter because I'm here now.
Right.
But I had to climb that tree of knowledge, and all of these things before I could arrive in the present, where it became very simple. I
Right.
had to go through the forgiveness process, which took years and discoveries and all of this and journeys, and then it all just came back into this point of just, wow, I just got to be here now. I just got to keep surrendering to the moment. I don't got to reach anything. I don't got to go look for jobs. I don't got to trip. It's all perfect. And it
Yeah.
just shows up. And that's what Jesus meant when he told his apostles, hey, be present
Hmm.
and everything will be added upon you. And when he left his physical body, he said, don't worry, I'll be everywhere and I'll be with you, because
Mm.
I'm also the Holy Spirit. I'm also you. You
Right.
couldn't separate yourself from me if you wanted to. You can't get away from the field of consciousness. You are the field of consciousness.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's profound. So, I mean, for you and for me, the numbers just started, right? Like it just started happening, and now it's a beautiful guide with different things. So, is there a difference for you, like a 333 and an 888, like you're seeing now? Do you find that there's a different frequency, a different meaning? Do you think that it's a different meaning for different people depending on their beliefs?
You know, I can't tell anybody how they should look at their experiences, but for me, they're all just messages. And I integrate them through whatever I'm experiencing in that collection of experiences in that chapter,
Hmm.
where I look at my life as kind of like a DVD. You know, it's a cosmic motion picture that is Johnny, a collection of experiences. You know, and if I'm in a chapter and I'm present with it, then there's a series of codings, and I'm navigating from the unseen, and then I'm also experiencing in the physical. You know, and it's kind of like I'm always tuning up my energetic aspects of who I am so I can navigate in the physical.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And if there's certain things that are out of alignment with me energetically, the universe will tell me between the lines, and it'll
Mm.
keep leading me to that. You know, and I
Hmm.
usually don't share these things with others because, you know, they're not experiencing that. You know, that's
Right.
in my present. They might be
Hmm.
in the same time space continuum with me or the same, you know, but they're not experiencing the same thing I am. You know,
Hmm.
they might have a completely different way of communicating with their higher power,
Right.
which is everything. You
Hmm.
know, and it could be a person telling me something at one moment. I've had homeless people that are on drugs come up to me and say something abruptly, and I know that that's a messenger at the moment. That's God trying to tell me something because it correlates exactly where I'm at. Someone
Hmm.
will walk by with the shirt and it'll tell me exactly what I need to know at that moment.
Hmm.
You know, it'll be a number pattern. It's everything.
Hmm.
You know, and if we're present and we're open to receive, then we're constantly in communication with the source, with consciousness.
Hmm.
We're in this constant conversation with God through everything. I'm talking to God right now, and I also know God lives within inside of me. So I'm talking to myself, you know, and everything is a projection. You
Hmm.
know, so I'm just kind of telling you about myself, but I'm really telling myself about myself, and you're doing the same.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's so beautiful. You know, we're
Right.
all just mirrors of the one in these disguises, you know, which is
Hmm.
absolutely cool,
Yeah.
you know? And I
Yeah.
don't
It's
even want
super
to
cool.
escape it anymore. I don't want to be, I mean, I was a major pothead most of my life. And the last thing I want to do is smoke weed now because I am in awe with the fact that this is possible,
Hmm.
that I can be in a physical body talking to you in another physical body, but we're actually the same being, and that this is possible.
Hmm.
And it feels so good now that I'm present that I
Right.
wouldn't want to escape it. When I used to smoke weed all the time, decades went by,
Hmm.
you know, right? And I'm just like, whoa, times fly. I want to be here now all the time. I want to
Mm.
fully feel this, you know, even when I'm hurting, I want to fully feel it because we have to feel it to let it go. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
That's
saying?
huge. That's huge
Yeah.
right there, what you just said, because if we don't feel it, it has to be felt in the body, and we have, it has to be felt in the body. Otherwise, it's not. That's the bridge, that's the bridge from from this physical plane to the spiritual plane, is this body. And it's such an amazing vessel, right? And it's so like it's fascinating to me, how I chose my lineage. My soul chose my lineage before coming in. It chose to look this way. It chose to be attracted to certain people, but not to others. It chose to like navigate through this reality in different places, in different locations where I have astrocartography points where the stars, when I was born, are aligned in that particular spot on Earth where I'm going to get certain activations, and I get naturally intuitively pulled to that spot. It just, there's so much beauty and fascination about this experience. The more we open up to it, the more we surrender, the more we forgive, the more we let go.
Yes. And from my point of view, um, which you might say is like what I was sharing with you guys is I'm forever. and you know, my personality exists forever, and my physical form, it isn't born and it doesn't die, so the things I'm saying, my thoughts and whatnot are also the source. They belong to love,
Mhm.
so I don't hold anything against myself anymore because I know it's only God. There's no separation in my personality and what some call the ego self. Oh, don't be in the ego. It's all the same. It's all perfectly lined up for us to experience. I never was in control of anything. I only assume that I am in this third dimensional experience. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pick up this leaf or something. That was always gonna happen. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything's it's all love. So there's nothing that exists outside of love. Even our thoughts, even our everything. So yeah.
So yeah, this brings on a question. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it brings
Mhm.
on the question of what do you think, just you personally, what would you think, why do you think that if we're all one, which we are, and all of it's one, why does one person have to and all the lessons are the same, right? We all have to go through earth school from my understanding, right? But why is it that that person has to go through that suffering that way, and that person has to go through that suffering in a different way? Like why? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Desire.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Well, that's why we're here, is to experience. And for me, it's to realize that there's nothing outside of me that's gonna lead me to joy. And to shed ourselves from attachment. Can we put our hand on the wall without our hand sticking to it? Can I experience things in the physical but walk away from them?
Mhm.
I got a good friend in Kauai. He's a magical white wizard, you might say, or like he's all love. And he says to me all the time, like, it's easy to acquire things, but getting rid of them is another thing. So can we
Mm,
have a relationship with another mirror of ourself without being attached to it? Can we have an experience with you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
With everything. And that's
Mhm.
what this is about. Desire keeps people in the physical plane. And Yogananda would say that, through the breath and our practice of raising the life force, the more people practice, the more liberated they become. And
Mhm.
it's like a vacuum because Maya, or the material plane of illusion, is very, very attractive. But if we can reverse our current back up and magnetize it back up, then we can move back into the spiritual plane in the higher dimensions of the self. Or we can allow the Shakti to bring us down into the third dimensional plane where, everything we reach for brings no satisfaction. And it takes, I don't believe in time so much, and the idea that people have been through thousands of lives. And, I'm not saying that that's not true or not, but the reality of it is it still there? Can I walk into a room and not have attachment to something?
Mm,
Can I put something back in my life? Like a smartphone, for example. I had a flip phone for years. You know how I am. And
mhm.
I'm like, oh, I don't want to have the distractions of the smartphone and the internet. But can I have a smartphone and not be subject to those things? And now
Right.
I can. It's no longer sticky to me.
Mhm.
I'm no longer stuck in the same. Can I be around people smoking pot? Yes, because I'm not going to reach for it. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? There's no desire there anymore to escape myself. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
Yeah.
that it's the same with the earth plane. Can we come into the earth plane and experience everything that we were here to experience and let it go? And then the next lifetime go, that wasn't satisfying.
Mhm.
I did all those things. I was the rich king, or I was the, blah blah blah, and I brought no satisfaction.
Mhm.
And I witnessed this at a young age through my family. I witnessed it with my grandpa and both grandpas, my stepfather. They were captains of industry, and they had all of these material things. And at the end of their lives, they weren't happy about it. They weren't sitting there telling me about, damn, I wish I made some more money. They were like kind of unsatisfied. And it
Mhm.
showed me like, wow, I don't want to go down that road. And
Mhm.
they did it in different ways, and they had different mixes of experiences, ranches and boats and blah blah blah, mountain houses, and they were still not happy. And I
Right.
said, I want to find what actually makes you happy. And
Mm-hmm.
now I see that it's not a word. It's within. It's joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's forgiveness. And that was huge for me, that I loved them so much that I didn't want to travel down the same roads as them. And they shared with me at the end of their collection of experiences or life that it didn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't bring any satisfaction, and they weren't happy at the end of their life, or they weren't beaming with joy and released their body in mahasamadhi. They actually had to go through the death experience, and that's something that, as a Kriya yogi, I truly, this time around, don't necessarily feel like it's going to be part of my present. I'm open to releasing the body before I have to go through that experience. That brings you back into another cycle in the earth plane.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but
Yeah,
that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah, thanks for sharing that, brother. That all really profound things. My energy is just like honing in on everything. So, yeah, man, every time we talk, it's always really um expansive is the word
Well,
that comes to mind.
it's because I love you, and it's a heart connection.
For
You know?
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing I was gonna share to add to what you said is like the things that I've worked with a lot of elderly people in the physical therapy world and in different ways, right? And the people that I would always ask like what what was what was life really about for you? Like, and nobody would ever say about the nice house and the nice car and the wealth. It was always about relationship. It was always about connection. It was always about family, about friends, about spending quality time with people, being present, you know? And that to me it is the most important thing about this reality. And I do think that there is a part of this reality where our soul is clearing and removing karma and learning different things and expanding on itself, you know, and that's so beautiful because that happens through relationships, through mirrors, through everybody we encounter on our daily basis, right?
Absolutely. And it's all perfectly designed. That's the best part. And I used to have a quite victimized point of view on a lot of things, and I would curse God. There's certain days where I was just like, you know what? And now it's not necessary. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Because I see
Yeah.
the perfection of it. It's like God poking me and going, hey, that's still there, buddy. Let's take a deeper look. What is it going to take to piss you off today? And I'm
Right.
like, I'm not going to get pissed. And then all of a sudden I'm pissed and I'm imploding. And I'm like, wow, I got to release this energy,
Hmm.
or I'm not going to be able to align, and there's like, it's so wonderful. It really is, and we go through our flux, up and down until a point where it isn't so gnarly anymore. Then all of a sudden
Yeah.
a big wave hits, or like an eclipse cycle, and it takes you deep into like that deep little corner over there that there's a shadow still existing, and then it shows up in your moment, and someone pokes you, and you go, "They did what?" And you're like, "Wait, wait, wait, wait. Okay, there is no them.
Right.
There's only one. So what do they represent that I'm not seeing in myself quite yet?
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
and that's perfect. What a great medicine is the now.
Hmm.
We don't have to do anything to not experience ourselves. We're experiencing ourselves all the time. That's
Exactly.
why that's why the ascended masters get to that level where they don't need anything anymore. They just sit there in bliss. They've
Hmm.
they've they've experienced everything, and they've alchemized their shadow.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, speaking of which, those teachers that you just mentioned, those were Yogananda's teachers, right? There was a lineage that came before him, and so can you talk a little bit about Babaji?
Babaji is like an ever-existent yogi that decided not to leave his form for now in this yuga cycle, and probably throughout most of the next yuga cycle. And he awoke in Lahiri Mayasa to the ancient science of Kriya Yoga, which is a series of breath techniques or pranayama techniques that liberate the life force from the physical body and then the astral form back to the imagination of God.
Hmm.
And Lahiri Mayasa, um, he had a devotee named Swami Sri Yukteswar.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an incarnation of wisdom. And he is also Paramahansa Yogananda, my teacher's teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of the lineage there.
Mm-hmm.
And Yogananda, of course, brought everything that they are here because
Mm-hmm.
they were all ascended masters and they were all part of the Swami order. And at that level of consciousness, they're all one.
Mm-hmm.
So you're experiencing your higher self in these manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
And now I see no separation between any ascended master because I've had experiences with, angelics and Saint Germain and other masters now that I see as all the same master. It's all a
Mm-hmm.
manifestation of the source of the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fun to dial into the experiences and how the source comes through, but there's no separation in God consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're ready to receive that, the teacher shows up in the dualistic stage. And like, for example, Yogananda doesn't need to be present now in the world to work with people because he works through the astral and he's available now for people all over the world, where his pool was very small compared to what it is now when he was in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
He can reach all of these souls,
For sure.
and yeah, and they all work through that oneness. There's no separation. Um, and it's hard for me to stay in a linear format with all of this because I always arrive back at the present these
Right.
days.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this is all cool, but yeah, it's all now.
Yeah.
It's all you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And and
Yeah.
and you mentioned Saint Germain, and I feel really connected to Saint Germain, and Saint Germain is very present in Mount Shasta, which is a really sacred space for me and for the planet. It's the considered the root chakra of the earth. And can you speak a little bit about your experience with him?
Oh, all the time. I experienced uh, a profound relation. I got to reword that. My friend and I, Jeremy, in Colorado, we have a lavender farm,
Hmm.
and that violet flame works through that ray,
Hmm.
which is the crown ray.
Hmm.
That's who Saint Germain represents, is the violet flame of healing, and he's like kind of a guide for that energy that we can invite within us, and it
Hmm.
cleanses us. It helps us through our shadow work and forgiveness and whatnot. Mount Shasta is on the same ley line as Sedona and even Kauai. So Saint Germain is working with everyone as well. And he's also known to be connected to what some know as the Lemurian population. And then under Mount Shasta, you have a Lemurian city of light called Telos.
Hmm.
Now, I'm more about the truth of it in the inner kingdom, because that's all within us.
Hmm.
So the idea of Telos, for example, and these cities of light that exist, that are ever present, are also within us. Like in
Hmm.
Mount Shasta, for example, you have to go through the obsidian caves to get to the city of light under the mountain.
Hmm.
Well, that's us going through our own shadow.
Right.
And once we go through our own shadow within ourselves, then we experience a completely different higher dimensional reality
Hmm.
that was ever present,
Hmm.
which is joy. And when we
Right.
return to a state of joy, then our whole reality around us shifts,
Hmm.
because it's all pretty lights dancing on the screen of consciousness.
Yeah, and it's all
Um,
frequency at the end of the day,
yeah,
and there's levels to it. I just learned that the lowest frequency is shame, and the highest is love.
are you reading Force versus Power with David Hawkins?
No, this was
Oh,
just something that somebody shared with me at a men's circle.
oh,
And
right on.
yeah, and in men's work, we try to get, sometimes in some circles we work to see underneath, what's underneath that emotion, what's underneath that one, and to try to get to the root cause. And for a lot of people underneath all of it, it's that shame.
Absolutely.
And
The
it's,
self-inflicted.
yeah, and it's really, it makes me think of that. And so that then you climb up the ladder of the different emotions. And like you mentioned earlier, as the more clearing internally you do, the more that the wave doesn't have to be so big every time. It can be more like a little squiggle, right? And so
Absolutely.
every drop isn't as big, every hill isn't as high, because you're continuously it's spiraling and curving, you know?
Exactly. It's balance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can we navigate through the earth plane successfully in balance? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's experiences are different. So how can we stay balanced wherever we are? We could be in the middle of a storm, but still be here. And that's what Kriya Yoga does. It helps us balance our nervous system. Our emotional body is like always at these fluctuations, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
how can we be in the fluctuations but still be in our center?
Right.
And Michael Singer does a great job of kind of connecting the dots about how the life force is through Kriya Yoga rises. In Kriya Yoga, in the practice of cycling the breath and whatnot, helps us just clear our heart trauma. So the life force can naturally rise up. And like we were talking about Saint Germain and the violet flame, well, that's the crown ray.
Mm-hmm.
So can the life force naturally rise up and rest here? And then that becomes our reality because we're experiencing our life force in the physical manifestation. So if people are stuck in the lower three dimensions and everything's present, so one day someone could be in those dimensions, in that dimensionality, and their life force is stuck from trauma in their subconscious because it's not linear. It's all connected. The tree of life is connected to our subconscious, and the heart's connected to the mind and the higher mind. And but the life force naturally rises, and it can rise all the way up to that crown ray. And
Mm-hmm.
then we'll be having experiences within the what you would call Saint Germain's kind of spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not the best with like labels of certain things anymore and stuff. So don't. Uh, it's all within us, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all color. It's all
Mm-hmm.
colors.
Mm-hmm.
Our light body is based on color, our aura and whatnot, and you can look at it from the root to the crown within the physical form, and the journey of the life force back up to the crown.
Mm-hmm.
Can we bring it up to the door and hold it there, like Kriya Yoga has us do?
Mm-hmm.
Can we knock, knock, knock on heaven's door? So
Mm-hmm.
can we invite Christ into our life? That's the present, the Christmas present.
Mm-hmm.
Can we keep our life force here all the time? Can we go back to bliss, the crown,
Mm-hmm.
like Mount Shasta?
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's all within us.
Mm-hmm.
And we visit these physical places to do our inner work because it's all within us. There is no such thing as space. There's no such thing as time. There's
Mm-hmm.
no separation. There's no you. There's no me. But it's beautiful that we get to experience it,
Mm-hmm.
that we can get on a plane or drive across the country and actually not be going anywhere, but it looks like we are
Right.
because these pretty lights are changing around us. I got this jacket on. It's got all these, but it's just pretty lights.
Right. Right.
Whether we grow our hair out and cut it off, we age and now we're old. It's ever present joy. That's all that's real. We've always
Yeah.
been joy.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Have
that's all
you
there is joy.
have you visited Mount Shasta?
I have.
Have
I
you
have. I've had
have you
some.
have you ever gone to Ascension Rock where Saint Germain? So the story goes that Saint Germain actually ascended with his body. And so there's this rock in Mount Shasta called Ascension Rock where Saint
Uh-huh.
Germain actually left with his body from this reality.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I didn't. I'm not too familiar. I just know the energy. The
Yeah.
healing aspect of it. Oh,
Yeah, he
that's pretty
it's
cool.
a really powerful location on the planet that I've I've had the honor to visit and just sitting there and like feeling his energy. It's strong. It's strong over there. And it's so beautiful because it's all pine trees all around and then you're seeing the Mount Shasta and a lot of times it's snow covered. So it's actually on the mountain and it's beautiful. There's one location that's considered the real one, and then there's
Uh-huh.
one that my buddy showed me, which is really close to that one, but maybe a 4 minute hike from there. And
Uh-huh.
that one feels like the real Ascension Rock.
I'm excited to check it out, bro. Now that I'm back in California, I would love to go back to Shasta whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah,
Um,
I can share with you how to get over there, but it's a really
yeah.
sacred spot. And yeah, it's really interesting how these locations also are very activating for the body as well. Like different like physical locations on the planet, and
Mhm.
there's different chakras of the planet. There's every chakra we have in our body, the planet also has. And so it's interesting because I mentioned that Mount Shasta was the root, but it also flips to be the crown. So
It's
it
the
just
crown.
it just depends. Yeah.
It's the crown. And the most unique experiences I had at Shasta were being introduced to Lemurian ideas. And I say ideas because the vehicles that shared these ideas with me were just kind of reflecting my own understanding of consciousness,
Mm,
mirrors. And it's something I'd like to dive into another time.
okay.
Lemuria and that state of consciousness.
Hmm.
And Telos, and that's we could talk about Shasta like for a lot. We could talk about a lot of stuff in Shasta.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
for sure.
and there's a lot of people in Shasta that are worth talking to. I mean, you just go hang out in Shasta City, and there are some unique individuals. Just
Yeah,
go to the library. You
right.
know,
Or the drum circle, and you'll meet some amazing people.
yeah, I'm so excited. And Heart Lake, right
Hmm.
on the other side, and all those. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really special place. So, speaking of Lemuria, Kauai is considered like the Hawaiian Islands are considered to be the remains of what Lemuria was, right? Because Lemuria was a large landmass in the ocean.
Well, Kauai is a third eye portal. So if space for real, that's where the souls come into this earth plane and they exit.
Hmm.
And if you go down the Nepali coast, it's 11 miles in, it's 11 miles out, and that's what you might call the Garden of Eden. But
Hmm.
I like to call it the third eye portal. And there's things about Kauai that, the rational mind has a hard time accepting. But, when you bypass that, it just is. It's the beginning and end of time. Um, I'm very grateful for the experiences on Kauai, because I just lived in the jungle for 4 years in a hammock,
Hmm.
like, and it that frequency it helped me release a lot of things that were no longer serving this character on this journey,
Hmm.
like such as grief and judgment and certain things that could only happen here,
Hmm.
because judgment is from here to here. Like, can you see down your nose? You should only see your toes, kind of like thing. And it's kind of like Shasta, the frequency's so high there. We got to be careful with our thoughts.
Hmm.
Because if we're thinking things, it's like, there they are.
Manifests
They show,
almost instantly, right?
oh yeah, they show right up,
Hmm.
knocking at your door.
Right.
And I mean, but at the same time, you can have some very, very profoundly magical experiences in that frequency, and it carries us. The resonance over in Shasta is very similar to Kauai on that note. Um, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been to Shasta. It's been almost a decade. But I remember being on the phone with my grandpa when he was still around, telling him about that exact thing. I was like, these things I'm thinking are just showing up. And he's like, okay, you know,
Right.
maybe you're, a little cuckoo there. And, no, it's exactly what happens.
Hmm.
Because when you're at that level of manifestation or in that frequency, it's so you can experience yourself so fast.
Hmm.
If you're holding judgment and stuff, we need to experience it in the physical so we can release it. And then we can
Absolutely.
see it. We're like, wait, why am I judging that?
Hmm.
Like, oh, it's inside of me.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's all great. It's a great place to go heal. Kauai is a great place to go heal. Mount Shasta is a great place to go heal because it happens so fast.
Hmm. Yeah. Can
So
can you share some of the like one really profound moment, the one that first comes to mind in on Kauai?
forever, I realize that everything I am is forever.
Hmm.
Um, that was the most profound realization. The oneness, um, to know that you're forever is pretty wonderful, and that you're everything.
Yeah.
It's pretty wonderful. Um, and off of that, cascades down all of the other realizations,
Hmm.
which are not as important to the fact that we're ever present joy forever.
Hmm.
And that's not like just me, like just repeating words. I mean, the Poly Coast kind of showed me a lot of things like that. You go into this portal and into forever, and then you come out and you're like, whoa,
Mm,
okay. It's almost like going into a DMT experience. Like the frame's gone, and all of a sudden you're in this ultimate paradise, and you're just like, wow, okay. There's no words to describe it.
mm,
And you came out to visit me on Kauai. Like, it's remarkable. It's
mhm,
remarkable. So many things happen there. So many things happen. Relationships and chapters. I worked at a surf shop for a couple years and did this and had an apartment. Then I lived in the jungle with nothing. And then I caretaked livestock and animals and so many chapters. But they were also helping me heal certain parts of myself with the dream characters that were involved. And it was just this wonderful mix of healing.
mhm,
It was everything that my soul needed for 4 years.
mhm,
Human design came into my life. The gene keys came into my life. My understanding of my astrology came into my life. So now I got the petri dish, and I know this character's design, and I have an awareness now of other people's design. So how can we bring everything together?
mhm.
And I'm very curious now about other characters' design, so we can figure out a way to unify.
Exactly.
And how can we all work together,
Mhm,
with an understanding of each other's design.
mhm,
And how can I look at the gene keys and how they're awakening within my DNA?
mhm,
And how can I connect the dots between how I remember myself a couple of years ago into who I am now? And
mhm.
how can I really be grateful for that evolutionary cycle between that perceived period of time? Quantum leaps. And then I come
Absolutely.
back and I run into other dream characters, and they're exactly where they were when the last time that we saw each other. And I'm like,
Mhm,
whoa, okay, interesting.
mhm.
Now you're talking to a completely different version of who you know as
Right.
Johnny. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to have a whole bunch of things between you and I, and now those are no longer there.
Right.
So yeah.
I love that. I love that,
Thank
brother.
you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdoms and your teachings and your journey. It's been such an honor to have you on, man. And I think we could keep talking for days if we really wanted to.
Well, we've been talking for years, so yeah, of course we
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to have you on again at some point in the future when it aligns. And
Perfect.
until then, brother, thank you so much. Love you, man.
I love you too, brother.
Take care.